Hi, I'm Anna Denton-Jones from Refreshing Law Limited, and in today's session I want to talk about flexible furlough agreements and returning to work from furlough. Apologise first of all for all the boxes. We're in the process of moving in about a week, so most things are now packed, and apologise that it's not a nicer backdrop. We'll see what we can do in the future. So we're on something like iteration number 10 of government advice on furlough. We're on the second Treasury direction, which only lasts us to the end of July, so we are going to have a third one. Rest assured that the Employment Lawyers Association has been lobbying hard about gaps and not making it any more complicated than it needs to be, and trying to push government in the right direction when it comes to these things. But I have seen some commentary on how you're supposed to calculate pay for flexible furlough in terms of what you can claim back from HMRC, and just a very brief look that I took at it made me want to go and lie in a darkened room with a towel on my head. On that theme, if you go back to the beginning of furlough, which I know is going to feel like an age away, we were told we had to get consent from the employee to be furloughed. It didn't matter whether we got it documented in writing after we'd reached, for example, a verbal agreement, as long as we got something in writing and we kept that as proof for HMRC. In the guidance that's now been issued on flexible furlough, the wording that's used is slightly different. And it says, if you flexibly furlough employees, you'll need to agree this with the employee or reach a collective agreement with trade union and keep a new written agreement that confirms the new furlough agreement. So that does suggest another bit of paper. Now, ultimately, it's going to depend what you had in your first agreement, because you might well have covered it off first time round as to what arrangements would be and giving you the flexibility that you need. But you're probably going to need to write to people anyway, because there's a couple of things you're going to want to explain about how it's all going to work. So it makes sense to just issue a letter to people, get them to sign it, and then you've got something that you can keep for HMRC purposes. So you're going to want to cover your plans, what's happening anyway. You're going to want to talk, for example, if you're rotating some people on furlough, some people off furlough, back and forth. You're going to want to explain what the pay position is so that they understand that they'll be paid full pay when they're working, and then furlough pay for the rest of the time. You're going to want to deal with things like absences and people presumably following your normal procedures to notify you if they can't attend work, and whatever rules you're going to have about holiday. You might be wanting to make people take certain holiday at certain times, or preventing people from then taking holiday as soon as they come back to work with you until a time that's more convenient. So you're going to need to deal with all of those things anyway. In terms of people who might not be that keen on returning, obviously we're going to have to go into it on a case-by-case basis as to what the reasons for any objections are. Childcare is obviously going to be a big issue. We might have concerns about health and shielding and things that we need to worry about. But where we meet resistance, we are probably moving now into a territory where if people aren't happy to come back to work, then we're going to be starting to talk to them about redundancies. So we just need to get that conversation starting with people. In terms of actually returning from furlough, ACAS, or ending furlough and bringing people back full time, ACAS have got a draft document that you can use, a template on their website. It's not great. It's a bit sparse, doesn't deal with all the things that I think you would probably want to be dealing with. So in terms of my list, you're undoubtedly going to want to be communicating to people about the steps that you're taking to make the workplace safe, the risk assessments that you've done, the involvement of staff if relevant in that process. If you are making changes to things on a temporary basis, So the way people are working because of social distancing, maybe you're introducing bubbles, that we're all getting used to the idea from schools. If we are having rules about staggering travel time, entrances and exits to the building, so that everyone understands what's going on. We are going to need to talk about any more permanent changes that we're making. Obviously, if we are making any permanent changes to wages, to layoff clauses, job duties in the long term, things like greater mobility to move people around from job to job, those are contractual changes. We've got to have the written agreement of the employee to that, to evidence that we've got that agreement in place. We might want to address things like policy changes on holiday, as I mentioned, not incurring expenses if we're trying to save money. We might have a recruitment freeze on, there's all of those things that we might need to be talking about. I mentioned absence procedures and reminding people about that. We are probably going to want to draw to people's attention their responsibility for health and safety as well. It's a two-way street. They have got obligations just as much as you have. We might want to talk about things like what's happening with bonus, what's happening with commission, all those questions that employees are going to have. Are performance development reviews going to happen? Are we delaying them? Are we moving the goalposts on things to be fair because of COVID-19? There's a lot of things that people are going to need to know answers about. So we're going to want to communicate with people about those things anyway. And it makes sense to get them signed up to any paperwork that we put in place. So anyone's got any questions, usual address, adenton@refreshinglawltd.co.uk. Look forward to speaking to you.